Today I will show you a secret positional weapon nobody uses. It's extremely powerful, but almost no one in club level games plays this idea. What am I talking about? In this very typical Slav defense position, white goes knight h4. They are hitting our bishop on f5. Many players, without thinking, play the move bishop g6 in this position, folks. And they allow an exchange on g6, and white is totally fine in this position. They can go g3, bishop g2, and later play for castle short e4. Many players never consider making very interesting move bishop e4 in those positions. Now, I want you to judge the point of this move bishop e4. What are you seeing? What is our hidden positional idea behind inserting this little move bishop e4? Folks, tell me, after knight takes e4, how do we recapture this knight? I'm testing your skills of burying the opponent's pieces. And yes, knight on the rim is dim. You take back with the d-pawn, and please look at this knight on h4, folks. This became a buried piece. The knight on the rim became terribly dim after d takes e4. The art of burying pieces almost nobody uses. Almost no one in club level players thinks about this transformation. I was so surprised when I was talking to people, talking to my students. This was not in their radar at all. That's why I created a chessable course about this, the art of burying pieces using pawns. Look how the knight on h4 is affected by the pawn on e4. How can you solve your knight problem from this position? Almost an impossible task. So in fact, after d takes e4, it's black who is better in this position, and it's not difficult to understand why once you start talking to pieces. Now, let's analyze the move f3. You might tell me, okay, but what if white first chases the bishop away and then take on g6? Surely we're not playing checkers, right? They don't need to take on e4. Yes. Well, let's discuss this transformation. After takes, what has changed? We induced the move f3. Do you think it favors white or black, folks? And that's the key positional question. The insertion of f3, I think, is favoring black in this position, folks, for a couple of reasons. In general, they are weakening this pawn chain that was from f2 to d4. The king is slightly exposed. The entire diagonal has been exposed. The queen is shut down from this diagonal. Also, the bishop's scope is limited. Moreover, after moves like g3, which is, let's say, white's main setup, if the pawn remained on f2, now they will hit them with the move bishop d6. And now I will teach you a very beautiful positional pattern. Notice, if the pawn was on f2, this bishop move would not be so powerful. So after bishop d6, what is the beautiful point? What if white ignores us and plays the move bishop g2? You tell me, can you see a beautiful tactical resource for black? And yes, folks, you're a great player if you found the move rook takes h2, bishop takes g3, creates a double attack, and you win a pawn in this position. Notice, if the pawn would still be on f2 in this position, which is the main line, by the way, if you did not induce bishop e4, then this tactic would never work for black. You see, I'm telling you exactly the drawback of the move f3. One of those drawbacks, that after bishop d6, they have to play moves like king f2 or even f4. If they play king f2, then of course you play c5, and you want to rip open that diagonal to expose their king on f2. Concession for white. Black is slightly better. Well, if they go f4 to blunt your bishop this way, first of all, they are losing time in the opening, but second of all, they're also weakening this e4 square. Can you see it, folks? Now this becomes our game plan. How do you remove the defender of e4? Yes, the bishop has no business on this diagonal anymore, so the bishop is going to b4, pin the knight, and black's game plan becomes playing around that weakness on e4. Concession, you gave us a weak square on e4 as a result of our pressure on this pawn chain. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? So that's the reason why inserting bishop e4 is helping us here. Compare this with this variation, folks. White has no problems. The bishop is going here. You can play bishop d6. They don't care. The same tactic doesn't work for black. Can you compare and contrast this line with the other line, folks? Because here they can even castle short. Who can attack the king on g1? Impossible for us to attack the king. And now they will even play e4 and strike in the center of the board to activate their bishop as well. It's white who is standing slightly better in its position. So the move nobody plays is the move bishop e4. The first point is we are blunting the knight on h4 and gaining an edge. And there are many ways to play this position with white as well. If f3 to survive the knight, well, doesn't even work because after g5, the knight is trapped. Isn't it beautiful, folks? So white cannot even dream of playing checkers and make use of their knight. You go g5 directly and you win the game directly. And in this position, after the knight is dominated, if they play g3 for slow improvement, then you can strike directly with c5. There are many ways for black to play, but c5 is very nice. You want to strike right in the center of the board, utilizing the absence of that knight controlling those central squares. And if white plays d5, we are achieving a beautiful Benoni pawn structure, folks. Just to show you very briefly, the bishop will shine on this diagonal. This pawn is slightly weak on d5, and never forget, the main asset in our position is the knight on h4. This knight is a terrible creature on h4, and that's our game plan. Queenside pawn majority for black, a beautiful Benoni structure. Black is standing better in this position. The same idea also holds for white. That's an exchange Slav position, folks. Black just played the move knight h5, hitting the bishop on f4. Automatic move is bishop g3. People at all levels play the move without thinking, right? Without second thought. But I'm inviting them to think about this resource bishop e5 in this position. Always a good choice, right? To ask your opponent to blunder. I'm sure many people will take that bishop without thinking in this position, thinking that you're crazy. Why are you giving up your bishop on this square? Because you're damaging your pawn structure. That's what they will think in your level, and they will capture the bishop without the second thought. And then you will just laugh at them. You will tell them, look at my pawn dominating your knight on h5. Beautiful connection, pawns and pieces. Folks, please observe the situation correctly. That knight has no return. That knight is an almost trapped piece. I will play g4 and capture your knight on the next turn. Or bishop e2 and your knight is gone in its position. White has a completely winning advantage after the simple trade, crazy looking trade on e5. We are very serious in this case, folks. Look at this. In order to survive their knight, they have to make a move like queen g5 to guard the knight. There are many moves for white to win. Knight f3, hit the queen, queen h6. It's a total epidemic that is going on right in a black's camp. Everything is paralyzed for that terrible knight on h5. To rescue their knight, their queen is going to Siberia and their king is lonely. Look at this. And then you sacrifice on d5, of course, with a crushing, attacking position. Look at that, folks. While they are busy rescuing their knight, you're mating them on the queen side. The king cannot survive. What is this? You can even go for this mating attack. Rook c6 takes king a5, and then queen a6 is a lovely little cute finish, don't you think? So I just invite you to explore moves like this in similar positions. If they are forced to play f6, then you can go back and claim that that's a concession for black. It indeed is. It's a concession to play the move f6 in this very position. Not only the queen is blunted, but also the entire pawn chain is weakened, right? This pawn chain is weakened, and there's now a backward pawn on e6, for example. If you ever play e5 to get rid of the pawn, then this guy is becoming weak, right? Suddenly there is less flexibility in black's position right now, and white should prefer this position over this position to my mind so clearly, right? That's a much more harmonious and flexible and intact pawn structure for black. A fresh example from a student game from yesterday, right? He was playing the Slav, the opponent played the exchange Slav. He's playing very natural moves, right? These are very natural moves for both sides. Queen b3, well, knight a5 is the best move. He didn't play the best move, queen b6, but even so, even though white has a better endgame here, white gave black a chance. White played the move knight h4, and you tell me, folks, what my student should have played. He played bishop g6 without thinking, without never giving himself second choice. He played this move and white was better in this ensuing endgame. I asked him to consider this move and he was so shocked when I explained to him, right? Bishop e4 is a little bait, little trap, right? Bishop e4 is a beautiful move and I'm sure his opponent will take that bishop without thinking. You tell me, are we taking this way or this way? Of course, we take back with the pawn and claim, ha 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 ha, look at your knight on h4. That became a buried creature on the rim. I made a video about this, right? Taming the knight. Never fear the knight again. Look at the knight on h4, a terrible piece dominated by the pawn chain. If you ever go to g2, fianchetto knights are also terrible pieces in chess. There is zero future left for the piece. Black is simply better, almost like -1 to black. Incredible. It looks like black is creating double pawns, black is giving up the bishop pair. In fact, black has a clear positional advantage. I want you to understand the reason by looking at this knight on h4, folks. Just to tell you the problems white is facing here around their knight, if they simply castle short here, black simply plays the move knight d5, not only hitting the bishop and thus hitting the pawn on d4, after the bishop moves, you tell me, how do you take advantage of the knight on h4? Yes, a very simple move and the knight will be captured on the next turn. If the bishop has to stay put here, for example, bishop g5, we can first chase the bishop followed by g5. And we are winning a piece for nothing. And after knight d5, in fact, black is completely winning this position, folks. Completely winning this position. Bishop e7, hit the knight. After knight g2, you tell me the next move. Once the knight survives, the other problem emerges. Look at the bishop on f4, folks. Black plays the move g5, and now it's this bishop's turn to get trapped. After bishop e5 comes f6, and the bishop has no squares. You see? It's like COVID-19 that is going on for black. One problem is leading to other problem, like an epidemic spreading in the white's position because of the knight on h4. Amazingly beautiful. So after I told my student about this pattern, it was an eye-opener. He says, wow, no one ever showed this to me. Why is it the first time I'm learning this? It's never too late. It's never too late. For some reason, such patterns, deeper patterns, are not well known in the general public. But if you study my course, The Art of Burying Pieces, this should come naturally to you. Pawn play to dominate and bury the opponent's pieces. And this is the pattern, knight on the rim on h4 or h5, that should prompt you to place a pawn on e4 in those positions. And this connects to my homework position I gave you in one of my previous videos. This was your homework, remember? Bishop d5 was played. Should black take on d5 or should black play the move knight c6? If I give you two choices, what would you do as black? And most of you guys were correct in telling me the move knight c6. What was wrong with the move bishop takes d5? Can you now explain this to yourself? Of course, folks, after takes, this pawn is crushing our knight on a5. It's a very similar pattern. Look at your knight on a5, has no life left in its position. After knight b7, we are talking about a terrible fianchetto knight, which are almost always terribly placed in chess. Look at your knight. If you go to d8, oh, even more terrible, right? There is no future whatsoever left for your knight in this very pawn formation. That's a deeper positional pattern, but so interesting. And many people, when they see a move like this, oh, look at him, he's such a bad player. He's giving himself double pawns. And they take on d5 without thinking, never being aware of their terrible knight that is crying after the move e takes d5. You see how the same idea can translate in different pawn formations? We are looking at an Italian pawn formation right now, or rouleau pes, Spanish. Very different to exchange Slavs we looked at, right? But you see, recurrent chunk and positional pattern that I just taught you that you can apply in different openings, different pawn structures, different contexts. That's the goal of this training. I'm giving you all the beautiful stuff that has high chance of occurrence in your games. I will leave you guys with this position again. I'm now considering to make a course about the Slav, and this positional idea will definitely be part of that course. Recurrent positional ideas in the middle game. I will make a chapter about this, and that's a very typical and recurrent middle game idea. The art of exchanging pieces, exchanging on our own terms to limit the enemy knights. Isn't chess beautiful? I love it. I love it, folks. I hope my explanations made it clear for you, and I hope you won't miss the chance next time to allow them to blunder. Let them destroy themselves, and you'll be thanking me for making this video. You'll be commenting on this video with your victories when you used the same idea as I showed in this episode. Thank you so much, and I will catch you on the very next episode. Bye-bye.